Welcome to the third video of Machine Consciousness, Simulation, and its Discontents. This video is about the problem of simulation and the brain. Simulation is one way to view the problem of consciousness. It is a key perspective that we must understand to build a conscious machine. Simulation is an ineffable feature of experience. It is so fundamental that we are continuously blind to the functional power that simulation processes have over us. In this video, we will show why simulation is a model we can use to understand experience and conscious action, and why the contents of simulation must be described functionally. A simulation is the imitation of the appearance of an object or phenomena, or an imitation of a process or system that is not the imitated object, phenomena, process, or system. For instance, in Western culture, we think of dreams as simulations of an external world. We do not think of the external world as a simulation of dreaming. We think of illusionist tricks as simulations of magical phenomena and not actual magical events. We think of plays and movies as simulated recreations of sometimes fictional and sometimes factual events and people. And we think of stories as narrations, or narrative simulations, of events, situations, and characters. We often think the characters are the people they simulate. Sometimes we think of stories as factual accounts and explicitly true, such as Santa Claus. This is the basis for both religious devotion to Scripture and a variety of scientific and academic beliefs, and of course, our belief in myths. But narrations and stories are not the actual experiences and ideas they represent. Stories of all kinds are not the experiences and ideas they manifest in our consciousness. We easily talk about stories and characters as if they were actual experiences and not simulated experiences. This shows how easily and deeply simulation processes occur. The most important example of a simulation system is the brain. The brain is a mass of structured molecules all interacting. The brain is a complex mass of molecules and nothing else. From simple molecules like water to more complex molecules like proteins and DNA, which form together into larger structures we call cells. Masses of cell structures combine to form what we call a brain. But the brain and the cells are only connected molecules. There is no extra bit to the brain besides its molecules. There is no extra molecular feature about brain cells or any other type of cell. Cells are structures of molecules and nothing more. The interactions between each molecule is what creates cellular functions and the structures of cells. These molecular interactions are what produce cells themselves and what produce connections between cells to form brain structures and to form the processes we ascribe to the brain and nervous system. If you add molecules or remove molecules or physically interact with molecules, both at the microscopic level of cells and the macroscopic level of the brain, you can change, alter, or destroy the simulation the brain instantiates. Molecular changes of individual molecules are what produce changes in cellular activity and brain activity. The brain itself is not acting, any more than a cell is acting. It is always the molecules of cells that are interacting, not the brain. When we say the brain is active or a cell is dividing, we are simulating the behavior of the brain or the cell with our narration. But that simulation is wrong. The brain is not an actor, and cells have no powers to cause molecular action. The brain has no powers to cause cellular phenomena. All the action and behaviors we ascribe to the brain and to cells are the result of individual molecular interactions that can be described with physics, and nothing more. Molecular interactions are things like molecular motion, bonding, bond breaking, folding, energy release, excitation of electrons, etc. Basically, the processes at play between interacting atoms. There is no level of interaction above the molecular level that can cause the molecules of a cell or the cells of a brain to do anything. Any macro-level action is actually the result of molecular interactions. Any macro-level event, which we imply produces molecular interactions, is an interaction that occurs at the level of individual molecules only. We simply see the mass of these interactions and describe it as a macro-level event. But macro events are actually a mass of molecular-level events. Macro events are side effects of molecular-level interactions. The above diagram shows the complexity of purine metabolism. The molecules of cells have many kinds of interactions. So-called brain function is the name we give to an enormous number of molecular interactions like these. This inability to see molecular interactions has caused us to ascribe to macro-level phenomena powers and abilities to cause molecular phenomena that no macro phenomena actually possess. Here is a time-lapse video showing dividing cells. You see the cells move about and divide? The cells in the video do not divide. The cells do not have an intention to move or to divide, and the cells as cells do not cause the act of division or motion. The cells, meaning one mass of interacting structure of molecules distinct from another similar mass, have their division caused from the inside out. The cell does not divide, rather cells are divided by internal interactions of molecules. This isn't a matter of semantics, it's a matter of perspective. We need to accurately perceive the processes which instantiate consciousness to understand how we can create consciousness with computers. Ascribing powers to macrophenomena which are themselves side effects of molecular level interactions is an error. Our ordinary view of what the brain does is something like this. You see an apple, you have an image of the apple in your mind. But if we cut open your skull, we would not find any apple or any red or any concept of fruit. We would only find a mass of molecules. And if we swished that mass of molecules around in your skull, we would cause you to lose the word for apple, or the ability to see, or to even be aware of apples at all. This theater of the mind concept is completely wrong. Instead, what we have is something like this. The qualities of an apple, red, crunchy, sweet, or the concepts we have associated with an apple, a fruit from a tree, not an orange, are not part of the brain. We do not see qualia, or ideas, in the brain. This is the hard problem of consciousness. Where are the qualities of experience? Where are ideas? Because they are certainly not in the molecules that make up the brain. The brain is only molecules. Let's remind ourselves what a simulation is. A simulation is the imitation of the appearance of an object or phenomena, or an imitation of a process or system that is not the imitated object, phenomena, process, or system. The brain is a mass of interacting molecules that is in some way imitating objects, phenomena, and processes. And the brain is not those imitated objects, phenomena, and processes. Colors, thoughts, ideas, feelings, sensations, perceptions, the whole of experience are not found when we look at the mass of interacting molecules we call the brain. The brain does not have any red, or crunchy, or sweet, or concepts of fruit, or edible, or grows on a tree. If we disrupt the molecules of the brain, either with drugs, or by drinking too much water, or with physical interaction, we disrupt the experience of qualia and ideas. We disrupt the simulation we call experience. If the brain is simulating, its simulations should be imitations, not actual phenomena. Objects in a simulation are imitations of objects. For instance, the stick and water example is a poor simulation of light refraction. It's such a bad imitation. It shows something that is not happening. The stick bending and split. We experience all kinds of illusions. Illusions are clues that what we experience is a simulation. Aikiyoshi Kitaoka uses geometrical shapes, brightness, and color to create motion illusions. No motion is happening. If experience is not some kind of simulation, illusions present a real explanatory problem. If we can grasp that the brain is this mass of molecules, and that those molecules we call the brain are instantiating a simulation we call experience, how does the simulation cause the molecules to do things? Because we all know we can act. We can cause actions to happen. How is it we can have an idea, and that idea can cause the molecules in our brains to affect other molecules and do things, like moving your arm by signaling your muscles? Oops, that was the theater of the mind image. What I meant to show was this. So where is the idea of flex in the brain? And of course it's not there, because all the brain is made out of is molecules, and flex is not a molecule or a feature of molecules. Flex is an action, which means it's an idea, and ideas are not part of molecules. This is the flip side of the hard problem. It's not just qualia that are not in the brain. Ideas and actions are not in the brain either. The brain is only molecules. Flex is not a part of the brain. It is a part of the simulation the brain instantiates. We know flexing is an action and must be part of the simulation because when we look at the molecules that are involved in flexing, what we find is a molecular phenomena. None of the molecules are flexing or creating the idea of flex. What we call muscle contraction is the phenomenon of actin contraction, changing the shape of the muscle cell, as illustrated to the right. And yet, anyone playing the game, Simon Says, inherently understands that our own ideas produce muscle action. Let's play. Simon Says, lift up your arms. Simon Says, stomp your feet. Nod your head. Who nodded their head? Who put their arms down? because Simon didn't say to put your arms down. This simple game illustrates the power that ideas and mistaken ideas have to cause the molecularly produced phenomena of muscle contraction. How does the simulation the brain is instantiating cause the molecules of the brain to do things like signal the muscles? This is a conundrum we must explain with a functional process. Without a functional explanation that we can use to develop machine consciousness, we're just telling another story, just creating another simulation of what is happening and not understanding how ideas can cause molecular activity. The molecules of the brain instantiate a simulation. To understand how the simulation causes molecular phenomena, we are going to need to understand how simulation works. One thing you should understand from this video is that the theater of mind model, where we have a mind that has contents, is itself a feature of the simulation. The mind is an object we simulate. As we saw in the last video, the mind is a thought we have, but it's a bit more than that. The mind is a feature of our simulation. Now, it may not be a necessary feature, but it is a feature that interacts with other features of the simulation, and that is why the mind seems like something real. The mind is an artifact of the simulation the brain is instantiating. But because we know the brain is just molecules, we know the mind is not necessary to the simulation instantiating process. We could say the mind is an idea that the brain has. You'll notice I use the word instantiate to describe what the brain is doing regarding the simulation we call experience. I use that word because the mind is not creating a simulation. To create a simulation requires creating the contents of the simulation, and we do not ordinarily think of the brain as creating contents. For instance, we wouldn't say your brain created or invented the color red, or the concept of quantities, or the number 0, or anger. But you know about these things, so the brain must be creating an instance in its simulation of those qualia and ideas. It is for this reason I use the word instantiate, because we can share the same experiences. We can have the same ideas, the same emotions. We can see the same shapes and colors. We must conclude that we are sharing instances of the same simulated objects. Instances of the same simulated contents let us treat the contents of simulations as being more or less the same, which we naturally do. It lets us talk about our dreams, our memories, our thoughts and feelings, write letters to each other, and read writers from the past, and watch movies, and to some large degree share the same experiences. But because each brain simulation is different, the instances show differences too. If I say red, I may mean a stoplight red, but you may think a wine red. Instances also allow for the possibility that different simulations may have unique contents. An example of unique instances are new ideas. We are faced with a corollary problem for machine consciousness. How could a computer system instantiate a simulation that is aware of what its programs are doing? A conscious computer must to some degree know why its programs function, not just that they function or what initiates a program's function. No computer today can play Simon Says. A computer system can imitate or simulate playing Simon Says, but none can actually play the game. Understanding the problem of how to get a computer to actually play Simon Says shows how entangled the problem of simulation is. Simulation is woven into our experience as humans and programmers. It is also deeply entangled with computation itself. We must understand the distinction between simulation and actual performance so that we can create the basis for actual, not simulated performance by a computer. We must understand what simulations are and how they work, especially that simulation we call experience. In the next video, we will look at our experiences as a simulation, because qualia, ideas, and actions appear to occur in or be instantiated in simulation space, not in the molecular space we call the brain.